Welcome. Thanks for dialing in. It started. Here we have the first bigger bankruptcy among the banks. But will it spread to your bank as well, and are your deposits safe? Let's have a look into the hidden causes of this collapse to see if we can answer that question. So it is all over the news that Silicon Valley Bank declared bankruptcy and appoints the FDIC as receiver of its remaining assets. And of course, immediately articles are issued trying to calm the public by assuring that no widespread contagion is investing the rest of the banking system, like this one. And again, the experts know exactly what is going on. Interesting, if they are so smart, why didn't they see this coming? Got to love the experts. Anyways, here is another one. I am so surprised to read that Kramer recommended Silicon Valley Bank as a buy just a few weeks ago. You literally can make money just doing always the opposite what is said in the media these days. But maybe that is why the show is called Mad Money. You have to be really mad to believe in all of this. It is really sad. So this is the first lesson to learn from this. These things come without a warning from the media, and it is not in their interest to have people rescuing their cash. I have not looked into this, but I would guess that a lot of funds and sponsorships to the media are also coming from the financial industry. Also, not to forget, people who present or who make shows are rarely knowledgeable about the fields they speak about, because if so, they would run their own portfolio and be fine just like that. Next issue is the FDIC. As I have mentioned in earlier videos, the amount that the FDIC has as insurance fund balance is just around 1.26% of the total deposits. At least that is how I read their annual report. Please correct me if I'm wrong with this, so they can deal with an isolated banking failure, but not with a system issue faced by many banks at the same time. I will later speak about what I see as systemic here. Also, even though $250,000 sounds a lot for individuals, for a larger business, that is nothing. So even with the FDIC insurance payout, there would be still a huge contagion effect on other companies and banks. But positively, I have to say, they operate very effectively. As per this news, they will already allow people to withdraw their money from Monday on. That is really fast. I believe the last time I have seen this in Europe happening, and it took more than 6 months or so before people could get some of their money back. So my respect, that has been working well. But let's come now to the main problem and why I think this is just the beginning. Primarily, there are now two problems that the banking sector faces. Number one is the devaluation of their bond assets. I also spoke about this in earlier videos. Banks, as the main issuer and holder of debt, have now a major problem because the majority of that debt has been issued during a time with much lower interest rates and much lower inflation. So would you, as an investor, want to buy old debt that yields 3% if instead you could get newly issued debt that yields 5%? Yes, of course you would want the debt with the higher yield. That is exactly what happened. All the debt with longer maturity dates on the bank's balance sheet, so corporate debt, private debt, mortgages and government debt is now pretty much worthless because its yield is far below current yields, and therefore automatically the value of such bonds has deteriorated significantly. In many cases, it is now zero. The banks did not have to disclose these losses because of some legal accountancy tricks whereby they are allowed to hold such assets in their hold-to-maturity books. Because if they hold them until the term of the bond expires, then they get their money back, unless the lender defaults as a result of the coming recession, but that's a different additional risk factor here. But in the meantime, this asset is not sellable at the market. This leads to a liquidity problem because these bonds are now capital that the bank cannot unwind. So if by whatever reason customers of such bank require more of their assets or savings to be withdrawn, which most likely will happen in a recession because people and companies are running out of cash so they use up their savings, then these banks will end up in trouble because they are not liquid enough to serve these withdrawal demands. This situation now gets worse from a couple of angles. If you remember, during the health crisis, regulators and governments allowed banks to operate with zero reserve requirements to stimulate the economy. Zero reserve requirements means that the banks could lend out 100% of their liquid funds to create new debt. And this debt was of course issued at the lowest historical rates, and therefore there's quite a lot more bad debt now in their books than they can handle. Even under normal economic terms, the reserve requirements were very low. But now without any, this means that they have been able to lend out every penny that their customers have deposited in their bank. So all your money might be lent out, so if you demand it back, this becomes a problem for the bank. So these two factors are the reason why I think this is a systemic contagion. All banks have done the same. They have lent out money as if there is no tomorrow during the last 3 years and to the lowest possible yields and without any reserve requirements. In my view, this is the beginning of a major crisis, maybe the biggest the world has ever seen. because in most of the other countries, the reserve requirements were also lifted, so they are all caught up in this now too. So unless the Federal Reserve pivots immediately and pushes interest rates down to zero again and puts the money printer back on burr, this has to end in a disaster. But if they pivot, then inflation will get out of hand, so this will end in a disaster too. So whatever is done now, it is going to be bad. The only benefit the pivot decision might bring is a little bit more time, so be careful. Hold your wealth outside the banking system in physical assets like gold, and get your seatbelts on. It is going to be a hell of a ride from here. At least in my opinion, as far as I can see. Thanks for watching and all the very best to you.